Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this week's PMI Friday webinar, Managing the Speed of Change with Marie-Clare Pedersen. I'm Susanna Clark. I'm going to be facilitating the session today. Just as you can see at the top of your screens, we've also released a brand new episode of our Room for Improvement video series. Michael, who was our guest this time, has worked in improvement for more than 10 years. And it's inspiring to hear him talk about developing that culture of continuous improvement and how that not only lifts the business performance, but also in many ways makes people happier with the way that their work works. So do take a listen if you have a chance. You can see this on our Knowledge Hub at pmi.co.uk, along with all our previous episodes. So to today, I'm going to be running the Q&A and also the chat, so you can get in contact with me through either of those. We love to hear your questions and any comments you have, any observations. So please do use those and I will put them to Marie-Clare. We are recording today's webinar, and as always, we will send everyone who's registered a link via email early next week to the full recording of both the audio and the presentation that you're seeing. As usual, we are also broadcasting live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So to those of you who are joining us via those live streams, we welcome you. In the future, if you want to participate in any of our polls or receive the recording via email, then you can register at pmi.co.uk/webinars. We will also send a short voice to customer survey at the end of today's session, and we are always really grateful for your feedback and suggestions. We use those to plan our future schedule, so please keep your suggestions coming. Thank you all for your continued support, for joining us today. And now I'm going to hand over to Marie-Clare and Managing the Speed of Change.
Thank you, Suze. Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome. As Suze said, my name's Marie-Clare Pedersen, and I'm a senior consultant with PMI. Thank you for joining me for this webinar, and I trust that things are well for you wherever you are in the world. The environment in which our organisations operate is forever changing, and some are saying change is happening faster than ever before. The ability to respond to change is key to an organisation's ability to remain viable and competitive. But what does it take for an organisation to respond at pace? So today I'm going to cover 4 elements in terms of this very, very broad topic. We're going to look at, the question of, is change happening faster? And look at some of the theories for and against that case. The factors affecting the speed of change. We're going to look at this difference between change and transformation. And then finishing up with what organisations can do to increase their agility in response to change. Before we get into the content, though, I have a question for you. And I'd like to get your sense of whether you think change is happening faster. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't. Or you don't really know. I'm interested in your thoughts on this one.
So I've launched that poll. And so please do cast your votes. And to anyone who's joining us on the live stream, please do put your comments in the chat for that as well. We're interested in hearing what you've got to say too. Okay, so I think that's nearly everybody who's responded. So I'm just going to give this another couple of seconds and then I will share the results. So you should all be able to see that. So interesting results. 40% say, yes, it is happening faster. Nobody says no. I think we're all agreed about that. 60% sometimes. And I'm sure everyone has different situations in which they find that to be true. And nobody doesn't know. So we've all got a strong view on this, I think.
Absolutely. And that's going to be really interesting, especially as we explore this next section about, is change happening faster? And that sense of, how do we reconcile this Part of our audience says yes, and part of our audience says sometimes. So yeah, let's explore that a little bit further then.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.
Fast change is not a new concept, and some of you may have come across Moore's law, which is the observation that the number of transistors in a dense integrated circuit doubles about every 2 years. Some of you may have come across Kreider's law, which is the amount of data stored in a given space will double every 2 years. And the third law that I'm familiar with is Crumy's law, the observation that the amount of battery needed for a fixed computing load will fall by a factor of 2 every 18 months. And all of these suggest that we have an exponential rate of change. However, in 2011, Kumi re-examined the data he had and found that after 2000, the doubling slowed to about once every 2.5 years, which supports alternative theories that exponential growth cannot continue forever. And more recently, there's been reanalysis of Moore's law, and that's also challenging the exponential nature of the speed of change. The images on the screen are of Fifth Avenue in New York at various times throughout the last 150 years. Can you spot the major change in transportation? And if so, between which years did it take place? And please put your responses in the chat window. Let's see if anybody can spot it.
Absolutely. So have a look at those 6 images. Very interesting, I must say. And we're not talking about going from black and white to colour. Yes,
it's the change in transportation I'm looking for.
Yes, absolutely. So between which 2 do you think the rate of change is most significant? You can put your answer in the chat, either on Zoom or on the live stream. So we've got somebody saying the sense of motorization, so between 1905 and 1910. I think
Absolutely.
I mentioned to you before, I always thought it was funny that the early days of the car, they actually also employed somebody to walk in front of a car to make sure nobody got run over by the car. Obviously, that not a strategy that works these days.
No, and not something they used to do with the horse-drawn vehicles either. So it's quite interesting in terms of that psychology around the need for that. So indeed, yes, that transformation of the movement of physical items from horse or horse-drawn vehicle to motorized vehicle happened between 1905 and 1910. And if you look then at the other photographs, it would suggest that actually nothing truly transformational has taken place in the transportation space since circa 1910. Because if it had, I might expect Fifth Avenue to look something like this. There's a bonus point for anybody who can name the film from which I've taken this. We got any takers, Sue?
Well, it's not me, because I didn't get this when we first looked at this. Oh, we've got, is it the Minority Report?
No, it's not. Not that one.
Fifth Element?
Yes, well done, well done.
We have a winner.
So yes, this is the take on sort of New York in the film Fifth Element. Are we confusing change with progress? Is speed and efficiency the same as progress? Are we dealing with the root causes or the symptoms? It actually comes down to the first question in the 3-question model. What are we trying to accomplish? If it's the movement of material objects between one place and another, in this case, then has anything truly transformational happened since 1910? Unfortunately, teleportation is yet to become reality, even though it was first documented as early as 1878. And it's still the stuff of science fiction. The discussions, analysis, debate will continue as to whether change is happening faster. Change is a complex topic, and there are many theories, including our own, but very little in the terms of truth. We'll all have filters through which we see the world and which affect our own objectivity. And one size will never fit all, and there will always be exceptions. What is important, though, is the focus, and the focus for this session is that for organisations to survive and prosper, an organisation needs to internally match or exceed the rate of change that is happening externally. So why then might it feel like change is happening faster? Well, we have a fusion of technologies that blur the lines between physical, digital, and biological, termed in many cases as the fourth industrial revolution or industry 4.0. The first industrial revolution used water and steam power to mechanize production. The second used electric power to create mass production. The third used electronics and information technology to automate. All of the time we've been, this is transformative. And at the time, this was transformative. But now we consider them to be the norm or even out-of-date technologies. This latest industrial revolution is already changing the way we live, work, and communicate. What differentiates this fourth revolution from the third is its ability to disrupt entire systems in almost every industry in every country. We have emerging breakthrough technologies, for example, AI, robotics, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, all of which seem to present seemingly endless possibilities. The speed of access to information is unprecedented, as a result of increasing in computing power and availability of vast amounts of data. This can give us a sense that change is happening faster than ever before. Before the telegraph, the first message was sent in 1844. Information traveled at the speed of a horse. Today, we have it at our fingertips. So a question we might have is the speed of change relative to our own experiences? We have a potential for a reactive nature to our improvement efforts and firefighting. And because we are currently in what has been termed the fourth industrial revolution, is this why it feels like change is happening faster? We're working hard to make sense of these new technologies that we find around us, what applications we have for them, and a steep learning curve that we ourselves are on in discovering this. Some suggest that change is not exponential, but actually a series of S-curves, where the quieter periods are as important as the industrial revolutions. It's these quieter periods that allow for true innovation. In an article written by Chris McKenna of the University of Oxford, he stated the most important thing is not the rapid evolution of robotic technology, for instance, but its application for the next 30 years or so. So I have a second poll for you. And my question this time is, what do you think is the number one reason driving change in your organization right now? Is it technology developments and automation? Is it social trends and media pressure? Is it climate change and stability and sustainability? Is it this reactive firefighting culture to fixing problems? Or is it something else? And if it's something else, please add your answer in the chat window so we can again explore those.
So that poll is launched. Thank you. I can see you're starting to select your answers. As Marie-Clare said, please do, if you've got other, please do put that in the chat so that we can add that to the conversation. And anyone on the live stream, please add it into the comments. We're very interested in your thoughts too. I'm just going to give that another 5 seconds or so. Okay, and I will end and share the results. So we've got some 55% of our audience have selected answer 1, technology developments and automation. 9% social trends, media pressure. Interestingly, with COP26 just recently going on, nobody is looking at climate change or sustainability as being, the number one reason for driving. 27% reactive firefighting. And of those who selected others, I've got forced by regulations changing.
Right.
To enforce technological uptake, so linked to the first answer. And also Mark, who's facing all of the options, which I can imagine is a challenge as well.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for those. And the challenge with these is it's unlikely that any one of these is mutually exclusive. The technology developments and automation may well be linked to the social trends and the way our customers operate and the needs of our customers. And as I say, the technology may be linked to trying to address the reactive nature to problem solving. So thank you very much. That is a good context moving into this next part.
Thanks.
So we're going to look at the factors affecting the speed of change. The factors that might drive the need for change can be summarized under these headings. So before we can look at the factors that affect it, the need for change is usually stimulated by something. And the results of your poll are certainly interesting in terms of aligning them to this particular structure. And if we think about the changes that are happening all around us right now, in terms of the political aspects, the governments and situations in different countries around the stability, recent changes in government in some countries as well, where governments are offering grants and funding in different sectors or for different elements. Things around competition regulation, and certainly how some countries relaxed competition regulation over the last couple of years. Will that continue, or will it be reinforced as it was historically? Around our economic growth rates, interest rates, inflation. Mentioned about the social trends, and somebody mentioned that in their poll. Population sizes, growth rates, age distribution, wealth distribution, and something that's come through quite strongly with the rise of social media is customer attitudes and opinions, fashions, role models, influencers. They're playing a big part in driving factors for change. Technology is a huge one, where we're looking at automation, R&D activity, communication infrastructure. The technology has broken down a huge amount of barriers that existed up until a few years ago. The environmental one is a big one, and as Sue's mentioned, COP26, all encompassing in terms of our environmental policies, climate change, our attitudes towards recycling and green products. None of these are mutually exclusive, and certainly, how social trends will drive the behaviour in other elements of it. And then with the legal, things like employment laws, consumer protection laws, health and safety, education laws, data protection, all of those play a part in how change happens, but also the drive for change. And for me, one of the big things about COP26 is what impact is that going to have? Interestingly, in my research, I was thinking, well, where does the 26th come from? It's actually the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference on this topic, and it's stated as being the greatest risk facing us all. And interesting, if we go back to the poll, it isn't something that you highlighted as being the number one reason for change driving change in your organizations right now. Be interesting to see how that changes over the next couple of weeks, months, hopefully, because actually this is an immediate change, is what we're being told. Suze, got a question?
Oh, it was more of an observation. I don't know if you heard the announcement in the week about the data related to skills shortage for mechanics who are capable of maintaining electric vehicles, which of course fits under many of these categories that we have here in the pedestal. The numbers are frightening in terms of how many people are not ready for being able to support the vehicles that we're looking to drive.
Yep, and if you think about that, the changes that are taking place, and in relation to education and skills, that's a 20-30 year development of somebody. So what is happening within our education systems, within our schools, that are preparing today's children and students for the environments in which they're going to be needing to operate, and the world they're going to need to operate in the future. It's an exciting time. I'm going to use the Cypop model to illustrate how different factors can affect the speed of change. The output of a product of the activity and the activity itself can be factors that affect the speed of change, but it's more likely that it's one of the inputs to the activities that is the limiting factor affecting speed. So let's have a little look at each one in turn. So let's start with environment. How are you physically set up? Where are your buildings? Where are your locations? How much of your organization operates in a virtual environment? How tightly controlled and regulated are your processes? And somebody mentioned about the need for change being around regulation. So how is that changing and affecting the environment and the environmental hurdles which you need to overcome? Where do your materials come from? What does your supply chain look like? How agile is your supply chain in handling change? How many of you are currently experiencing delays somewhere within your supply chain? What are your lead times, stock holding policies, minimum order quantities? All of those are going to affect the speed at which you can change. How old's your kit and equipment? Is it equipped with the ability to take instant live measurements? Is it collecting the data? Is it analyzing the data? Is it compatible with integrating with robotics and AI? Again, being able to adapt or change out your kit and equipment, again, is going to affect the speed of change. What methods are you currently employing? Are they manual? Are they all manual? Are they manual and automated? Do you have some manual, some robotic? What are the future plans for enhancing to AI or augmented reality in certain areas? And our people, we need to continually develop the skills and competencies. We just mentioned about the education and how we prepare people for a different future, but also mindsets and behaviours. Our skills can expire, and people need to be supported to continually learn and adapt. Not so long ago, the ability to take notes in shorthand was a desirable skill. And now in many organisations, it would be considered to be redundant, replaced by voice recognition software, for example. So one of the key reasons, certainly in the UK health system, that significantly reduced the amount of delay time in the patient journey was the transformation or the transition from manual note-taking or dictation to automation of notes, where now the letters or the information that needs to go out is virtually instantaneous. Most change is currently being driven by technology. But if we consider one of the lean thinking principles of flow, change can only progress as fast as the bottleneck. So a question for you to think about is, do you know where the bottleneck is in your inputs within your own organizations? Today, we have high levels of specialism within our organizations, with value creation coming from a complex supply chain. Autonomy and direct control is no longer the goal. The bargaining power of buyers and suppliers, as illustrated in Porter's 5 Forces model, is overshadowed by the threats of substitute products and the threats of new entrants. The term disruptive innovation was first defined in 1995, and today it's become common language for a product, service, or way of doing things which displaces the existing market leaders. Not all innovations, however, are disruptive. The first automobiles in the late 1800s did not disrupt the market for horse-drawn vehicles. And this was because they were expensive luxury items which few people could afford. It wasn't until 1908, with the lower priced Ford Model T, that mass-produced cars became disruptive to the transportation market. It's suggested that the amount of data in the world is doubling about every 2 years. And together with the climate crisis, the rise of AI, and the extreme levels of connectivity that we have, they're providing the environmental conditions for disruption in our markets. Disruptors, those who create the product, service, or ways of doing things, are often startups, entrepreneurs, industry outsiders, who are able to take advantage of these technological advances and aren't necessarily burdened with an historic organizational system to worry about. Some examples of disruptors, Netflix is one that's disrupted the entertainment industry. Wikipedia, within the learning and development industry, they displaced the encyclopedia. Airbnb, huge disruptor within the holiday and hospitality industry. And please, if you're aware of disruptors within your environments and your markets, be great to hear from you in the chat window on that. But 3 things these disruptors have in common are they are highly customer centric, they're focused on exceptional customer interaction, and they deeply research the customer insights. Have a look, if you have some time, take a look at some of our previous webinars around customer and stakeholder requirements and improving through the voice of the customer, where we talk more deeply about these absolute critical centric elements to transforming our organizations and the way we operate and the products and services that we deliver to our customers. Just a note of caution, disruption takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Just as an illustration, it took 11 years for Wikipedia to displace the Encyclopedia Britannica. So although they may feel like it happens overnight, it doesn't. However, we can learn a lot from these disruptors on how to develop the agility to respond to opportunities. Well, I want to talk about our greatest asset for a moment, our people within our organizations. The author Elizabeth Gilbert wrote, "The paradox of human existence. We are blessed with the ability to adapt fast and well to almost any circumstance, yet cursed with high levels of anxiety about change. People's jobs and careers must remain meaningful. Our leadership need to build powerful learning cultures and motivate the people to move beyond their comfort zones if we are to create the agility to be able to respond to change at pace. We are all capable of moving faster and further than we imagine when we're forced to do so by circumstances. The ability to respond is a competitive advantage, capitalizing on emerging needs and trends, but there has to be a balance. The other side to this is to do with stress, risk, and sustainability. We need to invest in our people, not only in their skills and competency, but helping them to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's something I learned from a gentleman by the name of Charlie Unwin. He's working in the field of human performance and psychology. If you want to know a little bit more about him, have a look for him and in the concept of winning the mind game. Deming stated, we must preserve the power of intrinsic motivation, dignity, cooperation, curiosity, joy in learning that people are born with. In that way, we are enhancing, capitalizing, investing in the natural skill set that we as human beings have to be able to focus our efforts and attentions in the areas of innovation and transformation. If we want people to be innovative, they need to have an organizational support system around them with the space and the leadership principles to foster that. So a question I have is moving faster the right question? Are we changing, or should we be focusing on progress? If we want to progress, we need to be able to develop our business systems for sustainable transformation. Some would suggest that change or continuous improvement is about improving the current design rather than radical change. So, for example, adopting digital automation to replace something we already do manually. Transformation suggests that what you get at the end is fundamentally different to what you started with. So, for example, finding new applications, true innovation, in terms of how we currently store data has massively transformed over time. So if we consider change as being getting to the same outcome faster and transformation as getting to a new outcome, as there can be no change or transformation in performance without first transformation in our thinking, our first step in developing an effective approach is to adopt useful thinking principles. Organizational transformation is about the ability to transform, evolve, continuously improve, and be prepared to tackle any challenge or take advantage of any opportunity. The ability to be agile, the ability to climb any mountain, not just the immediate one in front of us. Maintaining a high pace of change requires organizational transformation. So what can our organizations do to increase their agility? A truly transforming organization will be agile in sensing, understanding, and adapting to changes in their business environment in order to survive and prosper in the long term. A truly transforming organization will be continually learning from and improving the thinking, processes, and behaviors through PDSA. But to do this, an organization needs a new leadership mindset and approaches to work. The organization needs to have a clear strategy focused on the customer with complete process and stakeholder alignment. In my research into organizations that have developed an approach to responding to change at pace, I was able to identify some current attributes. And some of these were the ability to remove the boundaries and silos that limit an organization's ability to collaborate. The ability to streamline decision-making processes through having flatter, non-hierarchical structures. Empowering the frontline team members in the decision-making process. and developing a higher tolerance for mistakes. And as I was going through these, I realized that actually Deming had offered up the solution in his 14 points for management when he first presented it in his book, Out of the Crisis, which was published back in 1982. And for anyone who hasn't read his book, it is well worth your time. And for anyone who has, now might be a good time to revisit it and reread it. So the points that I had on the previous slide, he mentioned in points 9, so breaking down barriers between staff areas. 14, putting everybody in the company to work to establish the transformation. 8, driving out fear. So together with his 14 principles, he was providing that recipe for that transformation of management into a leadership style that would allow us to have a transformation of an organization that would allow us to respond at pace. Some additional attributes that I was able to identify from my research, allowing organizations to respond at change. Things like adopting new collaboration tools to encourage radical approaches to decision-making and ways of working. Exploring new operating models where the combination of technology and human interaction were combined. Focusing on energy management rather than time management. An article that appeared in the Harvard Business Review, Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time, and I've popped the link on the bottom of the screen here, explores the science of stamina and that working longer hours is not the answer because time is a finite resource, but that energy is actually a different story, a very different story. Defined in physics, energy is the capacity to work. Energy in human beings comes from the body, mind, emotions, and spirit. And in each case, energy can be systematically expanded and regularly renewed. But to do that, we need to establish specific behaviors that are intentionally practiced and precisely scheduled so that we can develop this link between motivation and energy. If we can recognize the energy depleting behaviors that we have in ourselves, and we can take responsibility for changing them. Working in cycles was something else that I came across repeatedly through my research. And this is about managing our blocks of time, to hyper-focus on completing goals, breaking big projects or big activities down into smaller achievable pieces. This can help us to prioritize our goals, give us more mental space. It allows us to actually remember more and build our skills faster. And grouping the similar types of work together does actually make us more productive and can also help us keep us in the present. But above all, to develop a system that prevents we need to have a system that prevents us from reverting back to old leadership behaviors and processes. For an organization.
Sorry, Emily, just a quick one. I have also just put a couple of links in the chat for people. So I put in a link, available at all good bookshops, Out of the Crisis, but also available on Amazon. I've put a link in there, and I've also put the link to the HR, the Harvard Business Review article that you've mentioned. Yeah, so everyone can find those links in the chat.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Suze.
Pleasure.
For an organization to be able to respond to change at pace, it requires agile teams across the entire business system. Enabled with the right structure, processes, and culture, then we have a system to enable our organizations to move faster. PMI have developed a method for developing this type of organizational system. Behind each element is a detailed approach to achieving deep and fundamental answers to each of these questions. Only when you have these deep and fundamental answers to all 6 questions will you have a truly transforming organization. that is agile in sensing and reacting to the changing environment, that allows it to be set up for sustainable survival and prosper in the long term. So a question for you to consider, how many can your organization tick? Where are you on that journey? Only when you have deep and fundamental answers to all 6 do you have your truly transforming organization. So in summary, these are my key learning points. Change is not the same as transformation. Our people are our greatest assets. How do we enable our processes and systems to enable them to deliver the value that we have as human beings? Technology is changing the world around us at an unprecedented speed. But how do we use that technology to help us not only to transform our organizations, but transform what it is that we are delivering to society? To be able to respond at pace, we need an agile system with a different leadership approach to work. I'll leave you with this final thought, something I heard recently. This is not about adrenaline-fueled speed. It's about speed by design for the long term. Making decisions and taking action based on small amounts of data that fit our theories presents significant risk. And for those of you that have done the prediction game with us, remember what happened when you went all in too soon.
Amen to that, Marie-Clare. Thank you very much. Great insights there, MC. Really, I think it's a fantastic topic, and I think it's it can be mind-boggling, and actually getting back to grounding yourself into how you can then control this is just hugely important for us all. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So just a quick reminder, I mentioned at the beginning, we've got our latest episode of Room for Improvement with Michael B. Anderson. You can find that on our Knowledge Hub, so please have a watch. And the idea is to be able to share it, with other people who are interested in understanding what's in this for me, why would I be interested in improvement. Hopefully they'll be inspired to take on the sorts of skills and topics that everyone who's on the webinar today is interested in. We've also got a great range of topics coming up on our webinar schedule for the end of the month. Barry is going to be delivering the webinar next week on the art of leading virtual teams. And at the end of the month, we have Sean talking about agile improvement, myth or magic. So please do join us for that. And as always, if you register for the webinar, then we will send you a recording. So finally, please do look out for our Voice the Customer survey. You're going to receive that from us shortly. We're always grateful for your feedback, your suggestions. And as you well know, we use those for our future topics, Agile being a great example of that. I can't tell you how many people have said, I'm really interested in how this fits. So that really brings us to the end of today's webinar. So on behalf of PMI, on behalf of Marie-Clare and myself, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for your comments in the chat, participating in polls. Thank you to everyone joining us on our live streams. And I wish you a very safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.